The Americans, after they toppled the regime, weren't expecting an insurgency.
Another spasm of violence in Iraq.
We were to leave within 3 months.
Chaos returned with a vengeance this morning.
We thought the war was over.
Our plan essentially was we didn't have a plan.
Suddenly we realized they're still out there.
There's an absence of...
It began with looting, then quickly turned to random bombing. As the violence grew, the leadership was caught off guard.
It is a clear sign that while war might be ending, there is trouble ahead.
Freedom's untidy, and free people are free to make mistakes and commit crimes and do bad things.
The Secretary of Defense, who had pushed to invade Iraq, now showed little desire to occupy the country.
Secretary Rumsfeld may have been part of the problem, but I think not in the way it's commonly perceived. The pattern that seems more apparent to me is not that Rumsfeld's riding roughshod over his generals, it's that the Secretary is actually relatively passive. And the Office of the Secretary of Defense is relatively passive. And the dominating role is held by the generals.
The generals had an endgame. They were going to get out of Iraq as fast as possible.
When Tommy Franks got to Baghdad, 1 week after the fall of the capital, he gave guidance to his commanders to prepare to withdraw all but one Army division plus a little extra by September 2003. That was the initial concept.
And in fact, the top American generals did go home.
Almost the entire leadership of the U.S. military changes over. General Franks retires. The ground commanders, McCarran and Wallace, are gone, replaced by the most junior lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, Ricardo Sanchez.
Sanchez, once a tank division commander, seemed unprepared for an insurgency.
What's going on isn't the maneuver of tank brigades against the Republican Guards. It's car bombings, and it's assassinations, and it's sniping. And it's all of this stuff that looks like Vietnam.
You've got chaos in the country. People don't even know how many troops we have in Iraq. They're not sure where they are. They don't know who's coming and going. There are no uniform or coherent policies.
We were in a state of denial. We were looking on these as sort of a small group of isolated diehards that we could largely ignore.
In Iraq, difficult work remains. They're making progress against the dead-enders who are harassing coalition forces.
In truth, neither the generals nor Rumsfeld had designed a strategy Sanchez could use to deal with an insurgency.
It's a shared responsibility, let me say up front, between national civilian leaders and senior military leaders.
General Jack Keane was acting Army Chief of Staff. He accepts some of the responsibility for the lack of a plan.
I think it's driven in part by my own failures when I was there as a senior military leader, contributing to General Franks' plan, that we never even considered an insurgency as a reasonable option.
General Keane is really highly admired across the Army. He's kind of a soldier's soldier. And he had argued in the tank before the invasion of Iraq, don't invade Iraq.
In 03, from a military perspective, from the time we took the regime down, we never made a commitment to secure the population, and we never had enough resources to do it.
So this insurgency bloomed across the Sunni triangle, and the Americans weren't ready for it.
The White House has been under fire over
The critics say we need to get our troops out of what amounts to a shooting gallery.
You had a Washington community, like it or not, a president who did not face up to the realities of what was happening.
It's a good thing that the men and women across the Middle East looking to Iraq are getting a glimpse of what life in a free country can be like.
We were constantly spinning everything to put the most favorable possible cast on it, both internationally and in domestic politics. When you went to Iraq, there was no euphoria at all.